Your sensor manifold, and you got your shutoffs, so when you're doing your maintenance, just shut off each end. You can pull it out while water's running, that's fine. This butterfly valve here is just for the sake of ensuring that there's some flow going through the sensor manifold. So what you're going to do is have it normally, maybe mostly open, maybe closed just a little bit. And what you're trying to do is kind of find the spot where the flow switch is going to recognize that there's flow, and that just tells you that there's enough kind of moving through so that the sensors are getting a current sample and it's not stagnant. Over there, that's the flow meter on this side. And we just looked at the specs. It should be able to handle up to 1,190 gallons per minute. So it should be sufficient. Everything here is tested more at lower flows, but there is some pressure testing done, so it's of course not leaking or anything like that. It's not tested at 1,190 gallons a minute, so that you might find some drips or something at that kind of a flow. Here's your modem. The antenna is on the back side. Here's your primary power. This is the power adapter to the modem. And this is your primary control unit. Right now, there's not any control happening. However, if you wanted to put a three-way valve onto it, you could. And these would be the control relays to the valve. So you could use, if you had a plug on the valve, great, or just rip it out and hardwire it in. Right now, the programming, so this is just your home screen. You can select what is displayed here, but by default, we've said it makes sense to have your pH, your NTU, your flow meter, and your flow switch. Here's your first section of the menu. Your inputs and your outputs are the main thing. Now in this unit, again, you've really only got inputs. You're just looking at your pH, your NTU, and your flow switch, and your flow meter. So here's where you are able to start programming them. So everything is pre-programmed. There's not really anything to do at this point. All you can do is really just look at it. So you could look in detail at the flow meter, for example, and see what kind of flow is happening at any moment. How much has gone through as a total, that's resettable. And all of this is logged internally and extractable over USB through this port. You plug in a drive, I'll show you how to do that later.
Okay.
Or you can access this box through the cell modem, and there's a platform online where you can see all the same data that's in here. Let's just take a look at how you extract the data. So we'll go to our main menu. Config. Scroll down to, File Utilities, and export system log or event log, or back here, there's data log. That's actually the primary one I'm looking for, data log. So you can ask it how much you really want, what type of frequency points you want to see on the log, that kind of thing.
So it's active throughout the whole time. So it's basically taking it every second. But if you wanted to extract it for every 5-10 minutes, every what are the parameters that are available?
Yeah, let's go back there. So your range, how far back in time. So by default, it'll give you up to a maximum of 3 months of data, and the frequency is as frequent as every 2 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
excellent.
Right next that to 1 hour.
Looks like it, yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that works for me.
Now, another interesting thing here, not useful just yet, but in the future, you can export a user config file. Again, that'll go onto the USB. And what that is basically exporting the programming that's currently on it. Now, that's probably a smart thing to do just at the outset. So if anybody comes in and messes something up, you can go back, you can plug in the USB and import the config file, and you're back to so-called factory default or whatever we programmed. Yeah.
Okay.
So we should actually do that.
Yeah.
And do that.
And I mean, there is a restore default config. Now, you should know that that is the actual factory wall-cam default, which is kind of blank, no programming. So, don't do that unless you really need to. I recommend, again, using the import user config. And you want me to take a look at that?
That's a USB key.
Okay. Actually, I'll get you a couple as well. We got some. What else is there here? Oh, email report settings. Okay. Slightly confusing because there is an embedded platform built into this unit where it can email directly from here. But the data is always being sent up to the online platform called Fluent, and from there you can also email out things. There's kind of two locations. So you don't actually have to set this up in here, but you can. Okay, and that just gives you all your options of who it's going to go to and what types of reports. Is it an alarm report? Is it like all data logs? What kinds of things?
So what's the alarms? What would be the alarm report or
Okay,
an
so
event report? What would be if that's something out of parameter?
yeah, so an input, for example, on your pH, if you said it's a problem, if we're ever reading above whatever value, that's where you program this. So you got all your alarm features, and you can say, well, I want to email at my low and at my high, for example. Okay, so you just set that here. You say, well, 5 is my low, or 4,
And you
or
just
whatever.
by selecting that one, like, and then you go in and you change it.
Yeah,
Okay,
5.
cool.
There it is. So here's where you set what the alarm levels are, but then you have to set what happens during an alarm condition. What does it mean? So typically, under any alarm condition, we have a relay 6 just programmed to be an alarm, and from there, it's just going to light up. Now that is going to this relay as well, so you could plug in whatever you wanted to that.
Like a diversion valve if he was there.
Sure, a valve, or you could plug in just a visual indicator of some kind externally, or whatever you wanted. But yeah,
Like a beacon or
Beacon,
something like
yeah,
that.
sure,
and stuff.
or something audible, which would be terrible. But yeah. So again, the same as with pH on NTU, you could set your alarm parameters there. Okay. Now on here, you got calibration as well on your inputs. So this is your calibration button. I didn't describe this button, but that is your edit button. Looks like tools. On your calibration button, this is where you're going to select, is it a 2-point buffer, 1-point buffer, or process. So basically, you just got to know what the value is that you're calibrating to, and it doesn't really matter too much what you select here. But if you go with a process, and if you have something that's 50 NTU, great, check, and it'll just walk you through it. It'll start trying, and once it kind of finds it, you would say check, but of course it's out of range because there's no water there, so it can't make sense of that right
It
now.
would have to be like, you'd have to know first off that it's 50 NTU coming in order to calibrate it to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is, I mean, it fluctuates so often.
Yeah, it'd be better to get a cup of water. Like we have a little sample port right here, so just get a little sample of water, check what it is, and then externally with a handheld or whatever, and then calibrate your NTU based on that value.
Oh, that port, okay.
So yeah, this is your
Little test port.
little test port. Yeah. Okay. The
How do
same.
you change the units, like instead of gallons to liters?
Excuse me. Okay, so yeah, on your flow meter, that would make sense. Here's your edit button. Press that. We're going to scroll down. Flow units. So there's where you would select liters or cubic meters. Okay.
Awesome.
This smoothing factor is only a smoothing factor for what gets displayed here. It doesn't affect what goes on the data logs. The data logs will take the raw value, what it actually reads.
Good, okay.
Okay. Your K factor here, don't change that. That is based on what is programmed for the sake of this flow meter. So it's a 4-inch meter mounted on SCED 40 pipe. And if it was mounted on a different pipe, you would have a different K factor. So again, this is a good reason to extract the config file. So if somebody changes that for some reason, then you could put it back to default. Now, the other thing is that the K factor is affected by sometimes like the straight pipe allowances before and after. And so if you had like something very turbulent at the outlet there, you might affect the K factor. So in that case, you could kind of play with it to find, what matches true, but it'll be very close anyway. It'll also be very consistent based on any installation.
Okay.
You probably don't need to do anything, but if you're really looking for precision and you're finding that it's out by 2%, you could mess around with the K factor to dial it in.
Okay.
What else? Something about the flow switch that would be relevant if you added a diversion valve is that this flow switch helps you know if your pH and NTU sensors down here are actually reading current water. Because if there's no flow through that manifold, well, it's just stagnant water. And what if that stagnant water was just, it got a dump of some crud that got in there somehow, and the NTU was reading high artificially. It might be telling your valve to divert when actually it's a bad sample. So what you can do is on your valve, whatever you plug your valve into, you can put an interlock to the flow switch to say, well, don't divert if it's a bad sample. I mean, so there's a interlock setting. Pardon me, I'll have to first put the mode.
Well, of course, with this as the standard setup, we're not really worried about
Not worried about that. Yeah.
Well, we don't have a valve, a
Don't have a
diverter
valve on
valve,
this
so
one. Yeah, it's about more of a future type of application, I guess. Yeah. Okay. I won't go into too much detail there. Alarms is just a listing. So right now it tells you there's no flow, because there's no flow. HOA, handoff auto, so you can just quickly select any relay. Again, nothing's plugged in, so not too helpful right now. And on-screen graphing. So here you can start selecting what you want to graph, so pH, or you could pick a flow meter or something like that, flow switch, whatever. Graph. So
and you could
just
graph
giving
your
you a little bit
NTUs as well.
Your NTU as well, yeah. So right now it's pH. You can only select one sort of analog value like that. So NTU, graph. So there it's showing a little bit of data.
And this is all, but that's all accessible through Fluidity as well.
Yeah, Fluent, yeah.
Or Fluent rather.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem, yeah. That is really it. That's covering all the basics, okay?